Welcome everyone to a new week of Boxing Talk. This is Cali X Boxing, joined with D Style Boxing here on Cali X Boxing YouTube channel. Let me get rid of that echo. Good to be back, man. A fresh week. How you feeling this week?
Hey, I'm good. I'm ready to rock. Great. We had a problem on Saturday. Too much boxing, but that's a good problem, right? So it's all right.
It's a
Still
good
something
problem.
they should look into and fix maybe, but maybe Berchelt should have fought on Friday, for example. But you know, it is what it is.
Speaking of, like, the big fight of the weekend, the big fighter of the weekend.
Yeah, let me tell you something. Everybody should start putting in respect and say his motherfucking name. I am tired of people, all right, walking around pretending like this dude don't exist, counting them out, saying there's better fighters in the division. You know what's going on? When are people going to give Berchelt his respect, bro?
shout, shout out our guy Berchelt. He fought on Saturday. Yeah, and make sure y'all hitting the like button as y'all come in. Wheelchair Man John, shout out to you. He fought Diego Ruiz, fighter from Argentina. This is a setup fight, right? And it's back in Mexico. And this was Berchelt's first victory in over 3 years. I don't know if you knew that. Coming off of two straight
Jesus
losses, a
Christ.
lot of inactivity. It was over a year and a half since the
Damn.
loss to Nakathila, the surprising loss to Nakathila. So he got back on track, right? Berchelt, but it's against an opponent he should have beaten. He was dominant in 2 rounds. They stopped the fight in between the second and third round due to a hand injury. So Berchelt looked good, but he was supposed to look good, right? So the instead of talking about the fight, because the fight was the fight, everybody saw the fight, and there's not much to discuss. He rolled through him, which it was expected. Can he be? What is the pathway forward for him at 135? Because this was a lightweight bout. Is there a pathway forward for him? Because how I see the Berchelt experiment going forward is they put him in entertaining scraps at his level, his current level for the time being, and then they eventually step him up, right? Eventually they'll step him up and then he'll get iced, right? He'd be a good opponent for like a Williams Zepeda if you got to keep Williams Zepeda busy or something like that. But in the meantime,
Damn.
I think you just keep him in entertaining fights, and he has to fight more, D-Style. Once again, this is the trend, right? Is fighters just disappear, and Berchelt was one of those guys who disappeared. First victory in over 3 years and disappeared for over a year and a half. You just got to keep him busy first and foremost.
They got to keep him busy. Isn't that a shame? We're starting to talk about him as a stay busy fight for guys like Cepeda, El Camarón. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The shrimp. You know what I mean? Shout out to him. But that just because there was a time, and it's hard to believe now, and it's easy to look in hindsight and whatever. But there was a time, right, when Berchelt was undefeated and
Yep.
Berchelt was running through guys, and he just never improved, and he's kind of just stayed where he was, and was defeated in devastating fashion against Valdez. Right,
Mm-hmm.
comes back and Nakathila does even a worse job on him,
Yeah.
and he just isn't the same anymore. Right, it's not the same guy. This is not Berchelt at one point was considered a top three, top four fighter out of Mexico. Right, like that's how highly regarded he was. Um, even legends like Julio Cesar Chavez thought highly of him because they kind of saw what he was and what he could be. Right, but he never. It's an example of a fighter that never lived up to what he could have been, or what people thought, I should say, could have been. Maybe he just is who he is. You know what I mean? And he just like
And there's
that's
nothing
that.
wung with that, right? There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong
yeah.
with that.
Look, at the end of the day, he could say he was a world champion. He could tell
Yep.
his grandkids when he's older. That's still an accomplishment. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but I'm talking about what his expectations were and what people
Yeah.
thought he was going to be.
He was a
And
3-1, 3.5-1 favorite against Valdez. And then we
he
saw how
was,
that worked out,
and
right?
every
He
almost
was an even
every
bigger favorite against Nakathila.
Nakatila, and he got thoroughly destroyed, which means there was something wrong with what we saw, obviously, right? That's number
Mm-hmm.
one. Second, I do think he maybe then this could be an example, Calix, of guys just start thinking hard. Is it a good idea to stick around too long in a weight class? because it could really destroy you. It could destroy your, like, it could just,
Yeah.
because then when you take a beating, you're taking it when you have less fluid in your brain, less fluid in your body because you're weight trained.
Errol
Uh,
Spence, right? Errol
yes,
Spence.
Errol Spence is another example. Now people, oh, don't make excuses. I'm not. It was their decision to stay in the weight class. They were trying to get an advantage of it by being,
Yes.
the term that they use are weight bullies, right? And when it works, we get on them. Oh, he's a weight bully. He was way heavier. And then when it doesn't work, we start to say, and we point that out. People feel otherwise. Look, several examples, really quick. I think Canelo started looking better when he moved to middleweight, trying to still make that 154-pound weight. He just looked better when he did that. I think Canelo made the right decision going to 168. Oh, but those guys are bigger. Yes. But guess what? Canelo does not have a weight camp. He could just focus on the game plan, getting in shape, and what he needs to do. And I think it's worked for him.
Remember Cotto, his last couple fights at 140, and you can tell, Malignaggi hurt him. Malignaggi hurt him, and then he moves up to 147, and then he's taking bigger shots from bigger punchers.
Yeah, and then he goes.
You've had trainers. I've heard trainers talk about this. Strength and conditioning coaches talk about this. Is the reason it's such a threat to drain yourself for so many fights is, from what I understand, the fluid in your brain is the last to come back, and you don't have enough time to recover between being weight drained and the actual fight. It's a real problem.
And I'm telling you right now that I think the reason Berchelt was coming in so heavy is because he felt that was an advantage he was going to use, right? And maybe he wasn't quote unquote weight trained against Valdez. However, the effects of doing it for so long were probably still there. And in the Nakatila fight, I think we saw why he didn't move up in weight sooner. Yeah. I think we saw, okay, that's why he didn't move up in weight sooner. Because you kind of knew your style wasn't going to be suited for punchers or the heavier guys at that weight class. So
he might be a guy. He might be a guy without a weight class right now, right? Not going to translate to 135. Can't make 130 anymore safely. But as Chicano said in the chat, we don't throw away fighters. So there's a pathway forward for him, right? He's going to be in entertaining fights. I think if you match him correctly, there's a market for him. But you eventually get to that point where you step him up, and that's when he's going to fail again, right? That's when
you're Golden Boy, you have Berchelt on your card. He's a name for what it's worth, but nobody saw him on Saturday because there was just bigger fights, more relevant fights. No offense to Berchelt or Golden Boy, but that's just the truth. This fight should have been on Friday. If it was on Friday, it's more likely a lot of those people would have watched it, right? You didn't compete with just one card. You competed with two, and you're competing with ESPN and Showtime. I'm just saying, that's a lot of competition.
A lot of people didn't even know it was on.
I didn't know it was on.
Yeah.
I had a friend, message me saying, hey, did you miss the fight? Man, he looked good. I thought he was talking about Tim Tszyu. Yeah, he looked great. Hey, yeah, man. You think Berchelt could come back? Berchelt fought. What's going on? Later on, Chicano Prophet called me out. Oh, well, why aren't you talking about Berchelt? You know what I mean? But it is what it is. Shout out to Berchelt, though.
And I did not see a lot of the Golden Boy undercard, so I'll need to check up on this as well.
Oh, and by the way, what lesson can David Benavidez take from this? Because he's a guy that right now, look, he uses his size to his advantage, and good for him, right? Whatever. If you can make the weight, you can make the date. I've always said that. But is it eventually it's going to backfire? It's like the inevitable. Father Time's undefeated. Yeah. The scale is undefeated. He's already lost the scale once, right? And we saw he looked against Plant. Now he looked good on fight night, but how long is that going to continue? So if the date comes that he fights Canelo, and if it looks like he just didn't look good in the fight, and Canelo takes him out, will that be part because Canelo is just the best fighter ever fought? Yes. But if it is the fact that the weight caught up to him, then that's on him because he's trying to use it as an advantage, right? And I think guys need to learn, man, at some point you got to move up. I think the reason Pacquiao was so successful, aside from being extremely talented, right, and just a natural athlete that he was and all that, that aside, he always moved up. He ended up moving up when he couldn't make the weight anymore. He wasn't forcing himself. Maybe Pacquiao doesn't even have the run at 147. If he keeps forcing himself to make 130, right, he eventually gets weight trained, gets knocked out, and then he doesn't have the career he has. It is what it is.
Yeah. Let's go to the ESPN card and work our way up. I want to talk about 2 fights on that card quickly, and then we'll get to the Tszyu main event, Showtime. Keeshawn Davis against Nahir Albright. Albright was, so I heard from some guys who knew Albright and some betting guys, and they said, put a little money down on Albright. Put a little money down on a decision. It was plus 1,700. I did. I just put a little money, just a little bit. You can afford to lose. And it almost came to fruition. It was a majority decision. Albright was competitive in the fight. What do you think about Keeshawn Davis as a fighter? Are people's expectations of him too high? Are they moving him too quickly? Which my answer to that is no. If a guy says he's ready, move him. Move him. I want to see guys be aggressive in their career. I want to see him move on. But I'm not so sure that his ceiling is as high as people are making it out to be. I don't know if he's going to be a top 5 guy in the weight class. What do you think about him just overall as a fighter?
Yeah.
Is he ready for contender status, or is he still prospect level?
I admire his ambition to step up and want to fight the best, and he probably that's great, right? That's a competitor in him, and I can appreciate that, right? Like competitor at a high level, and doing it that way, that's great. I don't mind that, but that's why Top Rank has the best matchmakers in the game. They know what they're doing.
You've thrown out this term before, and I like it. Pre-anointed syndrome. Like, I think that's what you say. Is that what we have with him a little bit?
I do believe that a lot of fight fans just anoint guys right out of the gate, and they see what they like with their eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and they just anoint a guy like they just, that's it. That guy's the future. He's going to be dominant. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's going to be and we'll talk about this later. But he's a generational talent. But they're barely fighting the dudes at the bingo hall. You guys are already like freaking anointing them before they do it. Like, what are you doing? I'm not saying it's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? I think we got something here. I think this guy's going to be special, right? But I think words like think and I believe should be added with that. I think too many fight fans say things so matter of factly, and it's like, look, you may be right, you may not be right, but how about we see him do it first, and then we'll go from there. When Canelo was young and 19 years old and 18 at the time, I was watching him on Azteca and Televisa actually here, because I get the signal from Juarez. Now, who's this young Saul Alvarez guy? Like, and I was watching him, and I'm like, this guy's like really good.
Yeah.
And I was actually talking about him. I believe I'm the first guy to talk about him in the YTBC. And I was already talking about him. I was talking about him on Robodope Radio, and I said, look, he's going to be they're going to put him on the undercard of Mayweather Mosley. You guys got to tune in and watch him. He's going to fight Cotto. Now, not Miguel Cotto, but it's still Cotto, right? And at the time, it was like people acted like there was egg in my face because Canelo was wobbled and hurt momentarily in that fight, but then he went on to just dominate and beat him anyway, right? And for a while, there was questions about Canelo's chin because of that moment, if that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But again, he was 19 years old, and he beat a guy that's been boxing his whole life, right? So I thought that was very impressive to me. But my point is this: even then, I was saying things like, I believe this guy may be that guy of Mexican boxing. I think he is. Well, let's see. But I also, and I know you'll remember this, I also knew he had to prove it. Like, I didn't like the Matthew Haddon fight. I didn't like, just crowning him this thing. I wanted him because I believed he was that good. And if he's destined to be it, then just, test him. Put him in there with an Austin Trout, right? And that turned out to be a great fight. And Keeshawn Davis is part. I don't look at him and think the same thing I thought when I saw Canelo, but I do think highly of him. I think when you had that beef with Kid Austin, I thought that's perfect. Like that's who he should be beefing with. Like when he was telling Kid Austin, oh, don't mess with me. I'm at the high level and I'll hurt you, kid. Like, I'm like, nah, he tore like Like you're right there,
Even.
both of you.
They're right.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you two should be fighting each other. Actually, I like the fact that Kid Austin's calling you out. I think that's a great fight. You know what
That's
I
the
mean?
tricky part about this, right? Because the Keeshawn Davis fights that to me that makes sense in the weight class are the cross promotional fights that they'll likely not make. Frank Martin,
Yeah.
Kid Austin, another thing that's going to be tricky with networks. But the fights that are on Top Rank that are easier to make, Shakur Stevenson wouldn't win that. Lomachenko wouldn't win that. Devin Haney, if Devin Haney
Just
went,
not. He
it
just needs to
wouldn't
be
make that.
look, bro. He just needs to be developed, right? And the more he gets developed, if it look like I was saying, Top Rank has the best matchmakers in the game. They know if they felt he was ready, they already know what they did with Lomachenko and put him in there with world champions right out of the gate. They're not doing that for a reason. They know what they're doing, right?
It's why Mick Conlon just parted ways with Top Rank, or they parted ways, right? It's because all right, they got him to his fight. The Lee Wood fight was supposed to be his fight, and then no, it's
And
not.
then and then he also got the fight with Venal Lopez.
Yes, and
So
then it wasn't.
it is what it is. Now I'm kind of disappointed to let him go. I think it has more to do because maybe at this point Conlon's better off with a promoter in Ireland or in the UK anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that should be a domestic level guy over there. Maybe they'll do a better job for him. So maybe it was a mutual parting, but
Probably.
I would have still liked to see Conlon with Top Rank. I think they could have done some fun fights with him. He is fun to watch. I will say that, but maybe it was just a mutual kind of. You're actually we can't do anything for you anymore. Maybe you're better off over there. But
Yeah.
but just really quick, Keeshawn Davis, you're right. The best fights are the cross promotional fights, but I get that it's hard to ask for those because they're cross promotional fights, but we may just get some of these fights, bro. I think these promoters are being cornered by the market, and they're almost being put in a position where, yeah, we got to make some of these fights. You know what I mean? So hopefully we get them, but he ain't ready for the top echelon right now. I think it's like 2 years away, to be honest. And I know he won't like to hear that. He probably thinks he's ready now, but I don't.
Yeah. If he feels he's ready, throw him in. Two observations before I get to the big unification fight over the weekend. As far as this comment, this is what I was throwing out earlier with Berchelt is Zepeda steamrolls him, in my opinion, but that's eventually the fight he's going to be in. I think the direction they go is I think they need to get him busy. Number one, you can't fight once every 18, 19 months. It just can't happen. So just keep Berchelt busy because he's one of those guys that we will watch fight. If you put him on at the right time against the right opponent, exciting fights, why not? But eventually he gets to this point to where they put him in there as an opponent, right? For like a Zepeda. And then that's when it's going to go. Zepeda will annihilate Berchelt. Annihilate it. It'll be fun to watch, but he will annihilate him. The second observation I will make is I think you were right about some of these fights being a little bit more realistic due to what's going on over at Showtime in particular. I was watching a video someone posted Saturday of an interview that Steven Espinoza did with somebody, and they're throwing out possible Canelo opponents, and he's throwing out fighters that are not Showtime fighters. And I'm thinking to myself, and this gentleman,
that's strange.
Right, this gentleman that is posting this video, he's posting this video for a different reason. And I'm saying you're missing the point here of this clip. They're trying to post that, oh, look at them bringing up, different opponents other than Benavidez and Bud. That's not the point of the video. The point of the video is, when have you heard Steven Espinoza throw out non-Showtime fighters as a possible opponent, especially for Canelo? He's throwing out Bivol. He's throwing out Munguia. Those fighters. So what that tells me is there's a possibility that Canelo could possibly be fighting on another network next year. There's a possibility. There's a real possibility that he could be fighting on the zone.
Like 100% that could be it. Now, granted, I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm Paramount, I'm like, I want those Tank and Canelo pay-per-views, if I'm honest.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I want the other stuff, right? But they could always put that out on Paramount Sports. But I don't know. I've heard rumors that Amazon has thrown a monkey wrench and they're kind of in the mix. That is smart of Al Heyman, by the way, to get somebody else on board. And now you're creating some type of negotiation, some leverage. Yes. again, these are rumors that I've heard, and there's some things I hear behind the scenes. It is what it is. I can't go too deep into it, but the thing is this: I believe they're going to say with Paramount Global. I'm even though I'm not as confident like I was maybe a week ago, I still think that that's what it's going to be. But if it's not them, I think it might be Amazon or another streaming service. But will it exist? Will it be PBC that still exists, right? Just with someone else, or will it be Showtime Boxing that exists, but with somebody else? I think the odds are it's going to be PBC, more than likely.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to use Canelo as leverage with the pay-per-views and all that. Like, hey, we get this guy, he does bottom end 600,000, we sell it $85 a pop. It's an app. You guys keep half of that. Think about it, like how much money you're going to make in one day. But like, it's a lot of leverage that they have there, right? That they could negotiate. I think half is too high, by the way, but still, we'll see. It's going to be interesting, bro. I can't wait to see what happens with that. But if Espinosa is already mentioning other names,
yeah,
just imagine being imagine being Benavidez, thinking, and this again. I hate to go back to this, like I just do, but I have to. All right. Benavidez should have been on Canelo's neck. Okay, he should have had his foot on his neck. The moment he beat Plant, Canelo, just like Tszyu, I know we'll talk about him. Charlo, where you at? He should have been like, Canelo, where you at? Like, I'll fight this dude. Okay, if he wants to go on the Showtime, I'll fight him. I'll go over there to the zone and fight him. I'll fight him in the moon. I'll fight him anywhere. Like that should have been the message. Should have been a Clubber Lang type message. Okay, that should have been his message. It shouldn't have been no. We're loyal to PBC and Showtime. If Canelo doesn't come over here, we're not gonna do the fight. We're not gonna do the fight. That was such a dumb message to put out there, right? And the reason it was dumb. You and I understood that Canelo was a free agent. We both understood he could go wherever he wants. We understood that he could go to Showtime and make the Benavidez fight if he wants and fight those Showtime. We understood that, but people pretend that we didn't understand. We understood that fully, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that if Benavidez would have done what Castano did, right? Like, PBC sent him out there to get Teixeira's belt, right? Over to the zone against a Golden Boy fighter, right? Andy Ruiz, they sent him over to fight, Anthony Joshua, right? That was a PBC fighter, going over there. If they would have done what's been done by other promoters, other networks before, cross promoting, they could have done it, right? I understood. I know that he didn't need to sign with Eddie Hearn anymore if he didn't want to because he's a free agent. But the point is not, the point is not, I repeat, it's not that's what the only way the fight could have happened. It was the messaging of Benavidez. If Benavidez would have created some buzz, right? And Canelo says, okay, fine. I feel comfortable with Eddie, so if you want to come over here to fight me, we'll do it. Then he would have gotten the fight. Look at what's happening right now. He signed with Showtime, right? Or PBC. He already did one of the 3 fights. He was against Jermel. And now you have guys like Crawford throwing their name in the mix, right? And then you have Espinosa talking about other fighters. And now you're going to fight Andrade. What if he upsets you and you don't get the fight, right? These are not, obstacles I created. Benavidez and his team created them for themselves.
Yeah.
That they really believe for a moment, did anybody really believe for a moment that Canelo Alvarez was sitting down and his team was sitting down with Samson Lukowitz to negotiate a fight? Now, Calix and I heard otherwise behind the scenes, right? But those people were out here running with that, right? No, that was never the case. All that bullshit you heard about the $50 million, it was all bullshit because the moment he sat down with Al gave him everything he wanted. And now, as a fight fan, it frustrates me because we might not even get the fight. Logically speaking, the fight should be more likely now, right? It's so close. It's so far away, right? I'm just saying. Canelo was trying to negotiate another fight with Matchroom anyway for the Bivol fight, right? If you would have threw your name in the mix, okay, and say, look, if Bivol doesn't fight you, I'll fight you. That should have been the message. That's what he should have pursued, in my opinion. He didn't, so it is what it is.
It is what it is. I want to talk about the big unification fight over the weekend. Was this the worst unification fight in boxing history? In the worst division currently in boxing history? Yeah, Janibek versus Vincenzo Gualtieri out of Italy. How Gualtieri got his hands on a belt, I have no idea. It's similar to Raleigh Romero having a belt, somewhat the same. And look, man, nothing against Gualtieri, but if you want to throw out the Eurobum term, I think it would mostly fit him than some of the guys you call Eurobums out there. But decent fighter, and Janibek looked great in this fight, but Janibek was supposed to look great in this fight. He's clearly the best middleweight out there, right? And this is pretty much like saying who's the tallest midget, right? But he's the best middleweight in the world currently, Janibek, right? You would agree? We would both agree with that.
I'm gonna agree. However, I don't think him and Carlos Adames are that far apart.
Interesting.
I would favor him in that fight. I just don't think it's a given. I'll say that.
Do you think there's a possibility, given what we're seeing at Showtime, is there a possibility in 2024 that we see, say, a Janibek versus Adames on ESPN? Is there a possibility?
Yes, of course.
Because those would be the unifications. If we're going to see undisputed for Janibek, it would be Adames.
What's the record?
Well, no, that's actually not a unification because Adames hasn't been promoted. So it would be Maul.
Yeah, and here's another thing. Apparently,
I keep forgetting that Maul has that belt.
Maul has that belt, but does Janibek have the WBO? Which belt does he have? Which belt?
He has the IBF, and is it the WBO? And then Maul has the WBC, and Lara has the other one.
Yeah, so here's the thing.
WBA.
I can't believe Lara's a middleweight champion. That's crazy. Who did he beat for the belt? That's embarrassing.
And they're still going to try to make Lara versus Danny Garcia.
Yeah, that's stupid. But let me just say this before I lose this thought. So the WBO, I guess, has decided, or maybe it's been a rule for a while, that they don't do unifications with the interim belts. So that's why the interim belt. That's why Tim Tszyu's not the WBC interim champion. So like if they fight, like Adames can't even like put that on the line. It will not be a unification. So no.
Yeah. So I think we're running into a point now where with Janibek, I think you have to go the Golovkin route, right? Just fight as much as possible. And that's the frustrating part about this is he's not fighting as much as he should be. So you would say like, yeah, twice a year, his peers aren't fighting twice a year. So that's good. But I think with the Janibek, I say the same thing about a Zepeda. I say the same thing about a Munguia. Those guys need to be fighting 3 to 4 times per year because particularly with the Janibek, he doesn't have access to those big name fighters. He doesn't have access to those guys in the division that are going to get him undisputed fights. And they're not talking about him going up to 168. I have no problem with him staying at middleweight. Why not just stick around? Let's see if these guys at 154 eventually move up. Possibly Virgil Ortiz ends up there as well, as right. I'm hearing he's coming back January 6th, possibly at middleweight. So I think you stick around at middleweight, see what comes up. But you have to be fighting more because he's not going to get the fights, I don't think. I don't think in 2024, all of a sudden these guys like Adames, maybe with what's going on with the network, it's possible. A Maul, I don't think those fights are going to happen. Especially a Maul. Like, I think Maul's at the point in his career where he's going to get his quick tune up and then he's going to look for the big payday, right? I think that's where we're at with guys like Maul and Mel at this point, right? I don't think they're going to fight the Janibeks of the world. So other than that, you know, he's been billed as the boogeyman, but what I see is a really good fighter in a bad division. Would you agree with that? Like, boogeyman, it's excessive. I guess it depends on the circumstances. Maybe in this circumstance, he is a boogeyman because the division's so weak.
Look, I'll say this: there's no doubt in my mind Adames would fight him, like if the opportunity presented itself. I even think Lara would fight him if the opportunity would present itself. Quite frankly, and yeah, Lara has just a little bit left. He might even give him a good fight. But I don't know. Lara's feet, legs, that is seem to be gone. So that's not the same dude that fought Canelo years ago. But I agree. Good fighter. Who may be better than we think. I don't know. But
he's sharp. Like he is sharp. He's got
like,
power. He's sharp.
Is he gonna get the fighters? Like he needs to fight some upper level guys to see where he's at. Like that's why I want to see an Adames fight, because if he goes in there and dominates Adames, okay, then now we're talking, right?
The Denzel Bentley fight is what confused me about Janibek. Because before that, they're like, oh, okay, he looks great. We don't really know yet. And then the Denzel Bentley fight happens, and it's just 1-2 pose, reset, 1-2 pose, reset, 1-2 pose, reset. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? And he's got stoppages since then, but I just want to see a more active fighter. He's doing the right things, right? Like he's fighting the best guys available. He just unified. Nobody's doing that besides him and Golovkin at middleweight. Golovkin did it against Murata. And then he's calling guys out after the fight. I just want to see more pressure, and the way he can do that is just more fights. Just fight. Why not fight again in January, February? Just fight.
Yeah, look, it's not
like they did a lot of work.
No, for sure.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So let's get to the hot topic. Tszyu.
Well, before we get there, can I just real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The pre-main. All right. So look, I watched the one I watched live was a Showtime card. Okay. That's the fight I watched live, but I think Goodman is good. Like, don't get me wrong, he's really good. He's just in a division with the wrong dude right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the smart thing to do would be to wait for Inoue to eventually move up to 126, right? To try to conquer that division. And then I believe Goodman could become a world champion at 122. But he's got to wait for Inoue to move. He's not going to beat Inoue.
Goodman versus Fulton Jr. Who would you pick in that fight?
Right now, Fulton. I would pick but Fulton's going to win.
Me too. Like, I think so too. I'm just throwing it out.
So, but Goodman, this last win was more impressive to me, and he does lack power. Like, I never seen a guy land such sharp punches with so little power. Like they're nice and crisp and well thrown. He's turning them and everything, and he's not taking the guy out. It is. Some guys just don't have the power. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But he has enough to sting his opponents and keep them honest and all that. So, I think he's going to be around for a while. I think has more development to do, in my opinion, but I think he's going to be a world champion. He needs to wait. Fulton already went up, but he needs to wait for Inoue to make his way up. And I think he'll win the trinket for sure. I just want to know what your thoughts on that is.
No, I think so too. I think he's a world titleist at 122. The Inoue, it's just Inoue, right? Like nobody's going to beat Inoue unless it's going to be a size thing, right? It's going to be him moving up to 126. And then, you could say like, oh, I could see Robise giving Inoue a good fight, possibly beating him. I could see, even like a Figueroa at 126. Maybe those guys are too big for Inoue, but 122, we saw in May that's not going to be the division where size is the problem. Inoue, he translates to that division. Goodman, other than Inoue, I picked Fulton Jr. to beat him too. But other than that, you can maneuver him to a title shot once those belts become vacant easily.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he will fight Inoue. It's just not, but Takuma Inoue. I mean, you never know. Right? And that'll be like those two guys will be hitting each other so hard and taking nobody out. You know what I mean?
That's a pillow fight. That's a pillow fight right there.
But look, I always wondered, right? Like, is there anything he could do to improve his power and take guys out? And I don't know. Like it is the same thing I see. I see him throwing the punches properly. He's turning the punch. They're sharp
Yeah.
punches, but they're just not. He's fading on them when he goes to the body, but he doesn't take them out. Like it is what it is, bro. He just isn't born with it.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do?
Good fighter, but that'll always be his Achilles heel, and he'll have a ceiling because of that lower ceiling.
There's some, not a lot. Some I saw a couple of Australian guys talking recklessly, saying he could outbox circles around anyway. And like man, like the moment the fight gets scheduled, like we don't even need to put pending. It's just a W on like for anyway right there. The only thing pending will be the result. Like which round KO and like next to it like a question mark. So boxer's just gonna put the number once he knocks him out. That's it. I don't think he goes 5 rounds with it anyway. I just don't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the Showtime main event, Tszyu, Brian Mendoza. I gotta say this, D-Style. We talk about fighters and losses, and there's no moral victories, right? But at the same time, you can see certain guys either their stock rises or it stays stagnant after a loss. It doesn't drop. And Mendoza, after watching him fight Tszyu, is one of those guys for me. Mendoza's the type of guy I'll be looking for in his next fight because that guy has a hell of a chin, like a hell of a chin. I saw Tszyu almost knock this dude's head off. His head is spinning like the chicken exorcist, and he's just walking through him. And I'm like, good Lord, that 10th and 11th round, that was vicious. And I was tweeting it out at the time. They need to think about stopping this fight. They need to think about stepping in for Mendoza here because this is getting ugly. It was one-sided. It was brutal. Tszyu found his range, right? He found his range. He found his rhythm, particularly from the 7th round on, right? And the 12th round was a closer round. Could have went either way because Tszyu pretty much said, I just threw the kitchen sink at this dude for 2 rounds, and it just ain't going to happen, right? I don't want to break my hand on this dude's face. But Mendoza, to me, let's start off with that. He impressed me. Mendoza impressed me in this fight because I thought Tszyu was going to get 8th, 9th, 10th round stoppage, which almost came to fruition. I think I picked between 9th and 11th round. That's when it started to get sketchy. But Mendoza exceeded my expectations because he fought through that. And at the same time, first half of the fight, he was in it. He was in the first half of the fight because very good combination puncher. He puts a lot of pop on it. And I saw some people saying the fight was a little boring. Maybe they expected more of a fireworks fight, but both of these guys are good technical fighters. They're good technical fighters, both of them, and they were sizing each other up. They both very much respected each other's power, and that's why you saw a lot of posing in between big shots in this fight. But go ahead, your thoughts on Mendoza.
Look, he tweeted out earlier, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but congratulating Tszyu and saying, look, I'm going to go back to the drawing board, learn from this, and I think that's a good attitude to have. I do think Mendoza will win a title one day. I do. He's just going to be that long road fighter. He is going through a long road, and he's had it rough. Like, this is a guy that they've been put him in there. Like yeah. It is what it is. From Ramos to Rosario to the Tower and Inferno.
Yeah,
and then Tszyu. I mean that's a.
He had a tough road to get there. Yeah,
there was some fights in between that, but like to go 2-2 right there, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? Like he batted 500 against the 4 best opponents he fought, and he was an underdog in all of them. So like that, that's pretty good, right? So talk about being an overachiever. That he definitely did that. And he's also he won people over, bro. Like people want to see him again. Like this is the guy. This is the type of. This is what we're talking about. When people say like, "Well, what did you want your man to do? He couldn't win." So like, well, you tried to win. You know what I mean? Try to go for it, bro.
And Mendoza did.
Mendoza did. Like the effort was not lacking, and I value effort. I do. I don't value non-effort, which is why I get on Andy Ruiz for coming in how he did against Joshua in the rematch. Why I got on Areola, okay, when he would brag about how like my trainer needs to be banging on my door to force me out to go train. Like I don't value that. I don't value like Broner not taking boxing serious, and we saw how he turned out. I value guys that go in there and maximize their potential. And look, he went over to Australia. He tried to do what many thought was not possible, and he gave it a go. So I have nothing but respect for Mendoza. That guy's a warrior. I want to see him again. And if for whatever reason PBC falls apart, Showtime falls apart, and there's nowhere for, like, someone's gonna pick him up. Like Golden Boy could pick him up. Top Rank should think about picking him up. Eddie Hearn, you name it. That guy's a warrior. That guy comes to fight. And once Tim Tszyu, I believe, eventually will go to 160, right? There's going to be an opening there for Mendoza. And I'm going to tell you right now, Calix, if Mendoza were to fight Castaño next at some point, I would favor Mendoza in that fight. I don't think Castaño's going to take that power. I just don't. And people talk about Tim Tszyu being there to get hit, and we'll talk about that. Castaño's there to get hit, okay? Yeah. And he would knock out Charlo's best win. That's what Castaño would do. I'm sorry, that's what Mendoza would do to Castaño. I believe he would take him out. And I also think it would be a great fight, by the way.
Yes.
I'm putting that out there. Okay.
Sign me up for that one.
You know who else he knocks out? He knocks out Tony Harrison. Harrison probably outboxes him and then gets caught. Eventually, Mendoza touches him up, and eventually he knocks him out probably in the mid rounds. Mendoza is no joke. He just isn't. All right.
Yeah.
So, and then another possibility, maybe a rematch with Ramos. You know,
that's what Nando was throwing out earlier. I'm all for that too. You can try to get Ramos back, Mendoza, get him on track. Both guys coming off of losses, but I'm with you on the Castaño thing. I think Mendoza beats Castaño in a hell of a fight. That's a hell of a matchup. And the issue is, and I'm going to talk about this a little later, is guys are throwing out Castaño's name when it comes to Tim Tszyu too. I don't think Tim Tszyu could beat Castaño. I know why they're doing that. I know what angle they're coming from. Right. But dudes have to realize
they're going to move the goalposts when Sim beats Cemento,
yes.
Right?
And I'm going to get to that in a minute. There's a couple things I want to hit on first, but Castaño's semi-retired, man. Like, Castaño hasn't fought since May of last year. He's disappeared. He's gone.
He's the Argentinian Jamal Charlo.
Yes, he is. He's gone. He's disappeared. So be careful. Be careful who you...
Wait, Calix, wait a minute. So you're criticizing Castaño because he's a PBC fighter. Well, why don't you say anything about non-PBC fighters, Calix? What's going on right here, Calix? Well, it doesn't. You know what? Nobody would accuse you of saying that because Castaño, you know, he isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the first half of this fight, I had it scored 4-2 for Tim Tszyu. Mendoza was very much in the fight. I saw scorecards all over the place. I think very much we saw some comparative scoring. And what I mean by that, just overall, not comparative rounds, but comparative scoring, in that a lot of people thought that Tim Tszyu was going to come in here and maybe steamroll Mendoza. And I thought myself that Tim Tszyu was going to have a lot more success against Mendoza, and Mendoza proved more to me than I expected. But I wasn't scoring rounds based off of that. I think a lot of people were scoring rounds based off of what they thought they were going to see. And what we saw in the first half of the fight was guys landing big shots, but they were doing it in spots because there was good technical fighting between the both of them in the first half of the fight. But I thought that Tim Tszyu was getting the better of those trades. He was getting the better of those big shots. Mendoza was handling it well because he's got a hell of a chin. But I thought overall, Tim Tszyu was getting the better of it the first half of the fight. But it was close. I was scoring most of the rounds for Tim Tszyu, 4-2, but they were all competitive. And then from 7-11, that's when Tim Tszyu got in his rhythm, right? Which we expected.
7-11.
Right. And Tim Tszyu started to take over the fight. And that's when Mendoza's chin and toughness started to show. And in the 12th round, like I said, I think Tim Tszyu mostly just said, dude, I'm not going to knock this guy out. It's done. I'm going to take this round easier. So I had it scored 9 rounds to 3. 117, 111. I don't know how you had it scored. What was your score for the fight?
I had a 9-3. And that's only because Tim basically did a victory lap in the 12th. Look,
And by the way, people make so much about fighters going over to, say, Australia, American fighters to fight. The scorecards for this fight and for the Haney fights against Kambosos were all good scorecards. They were all fair.
yeah. Look, this fight, aside from I didn't get the late round stoppage, but and my video, my breakdowns was right there on Friday. It went exactly like I thought it was going to go, like almost to the T. I kind of figured Mendoza, like people that were saying, "Oh, Mendoza's going to come out, they're going to slug it out." Like apparently never seen Mendoza really fight. Like I feel like the only fight they saw was against Fundora. And the thing about Fundora, he has a way out of all the deficiencies Fundora has, and he has a lot of them, right? The one thing he does very well that I think fighters should kind of look at and take from, without the mistakes, is he knows he's a master. Let me put it this way: at getting you to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mendoza will, Fundora will make you fight. Like he's going to put you in a position where you have no choice but to fight back. Within 2 rounds, he had Lubin out of his game plan and slugging it out with him. I mean, because the mounting pressure, he's a swarmer. He throws a lot of punches, right? And he would take a lot of punishment in the process. So maybe that part's not a good thing. But nonetheless, yes, Mendoza had to fight. Mendoza had to grit, and he ended up knocking out Fundora in the process. But if that's the only time you've seen him fight, okay, I could see that. But he likes to box, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like Mendoza doesn't mind letting you lead, and we saw that early in this fight. If you watch the Ramos fight, that's how he fights. For the most part, when it's a thinking match and you're fighting a guy who thinks in there, like a Tszyu, he's gonna box, he's gonna move, right? He's going to start circling right, and then he ends up circling left, right? He mixes it up. He tries to hold, grab, move. I don't mind how he holds. He kind of holds and tries to turn you. So he's doing an action to create offense. So that's why there's a lot of nuance when it comes to holding. I don't mind how Mendoza did it, to be honest. But I kind of figured that. I figured he would box in the move. I figured Tim would do the smart thing and not just jump in there trying to knock the guy out, because Tim knew, okay, this guy's trying to set me up with a counter, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my paws up and I'm going to stay mid-range on him the whole time. And that was a master class at cutting off the ring. The one thing I talked about in my breakdown was efficiency, right? How energy is fight night. And I feel like Tim is very efficient with his movement. Mendoza was doing, if you notice, was moving a lot around the ring, where Tim is just cutting off the ring on him, right? And not moving a lot. And early, I just knew it. Like by round 2, I'm like, this guy's burning a lot of fuel here to do simple things like get out of the ropes. You know what I mean? To do something simple like grab, turn, and hold and move and try to land a quick shot and move out. He's burning a lot of fuel, and I think Tim knew that. And because of that, even going in, I felt Mendoza's not going to be the amount of energy he's going to have to use to have any type of efficiency. It's going to be too much. He's going to burn too much fuel, and I think by round 6 or so, and I said this, he's not going to be in the fight. Like, even if he doesn't knock him out, the guy will not be in the fight, and he wasn't in the fight after that round.
It started to get ugly. 9 through 11, it got ugly.
Even when Mendoza was winning the battles early on, right? And by that, I mean, like, he pulled off a round or something, right? Even when he was doing that, I felt like he was losing the war, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because look how much fuel you're using. Look how much it's taking out of you, right? To just try to win a round. And I think Tim knew that.
You're not winning. You're not winning by as much as you need to be winning to make up for when Tszyu starts, when that 100%. Gap starts to show, right? Because the gap started to show in the middle rounds.
Yeah, another thing I noticed is early on, if you noticed, when Tim was landing the right hand, he wasn't throwing it with everything he had, right? I think he wanted Mendoza to get comfortable and come at him, right? I think that's what he wanted. But Mendoza was a little too crafty for that, to his credit. Eventually, Mendoza got tired. He tried the hold hit tactic. That wasn't working. And then he was just too tired, bro. He just couldn't. The only thing keeping him in the fight was his grit, his heart, and his determination. That's what kept him in the fight in the second half. And you got to admire that. This guy is he's tough as nails. Like, I feel like he could eat nails, not snails, nails. You know what I mean? The dude's tough, right? And there was always a danger there, and Tim respected it, which is a smart thing to do, you know? A couple of criticisms, though.
I have one glaring for Tim. One
I have
glaring
two.
criticism.
So let me say the two. One is, and maybe there's a method for it, maybe there's a reason for it that we don't understand, but I would like him to use the jab more. That's number one.
That was going to be my one.
Yeah,
it's a glaring deficiency, right?
Yeah, but like,
because he threw it a couple of times, it's sharp. And you know he's too good at setting up the other punches with his timing that there's no reason he doesn't have a sharp jab.
I just think it's
yet he doesn't. It's non-existent. Yeah, it's just non-existent.
What he's trying to accomplish in the fight, what Tim's trying to accomplish, this is why it's a double-edged sword. He's trying to stay in front of you and give you no breathing room, and he's trying to suffocate you pretty much, right? If you notice in the fight, was there ever a moment where you said, "Oh, look, he's kind of letting like"? Was there ever a moment? Let me reword that. Did you see Mendoza for 1 second be able to take a breather in that fight? No, he was always in front of him, always, right? And he's trying to accomplish, he's trying to suffocate him, right? He's trying to overwhelm him mentally and make him think and process that brain and not know when the punch is coming. And it works really good for Tim. And who am I to say, hey, jab more because it worked? But I honestly believe, though, that in the middle rounds, right, when Mendoza was trying to grab, churn, hold, hook, that's when he started using the jab, and that nullified that neutralized that strategy, right? So he kept it in the holster, he took it out of the holster, started using it, and I probably thought the same thing you thought. Why do you use that in the first round?
So the thing I was thinking is, all right, so people will throw out Golovkin comparisons, right? And
they're not that alike to me, but
they're not either. But I hear it. But the thing about Golovkin, he made his life so much easier by using a jab. He was the only fighter in the sport landing double-digit round jabs per round. He's using as a power punch. And when I'm watching Tim Tszyu fight, the jab can be a power punch, right? And he's not using it. He's not using it as a defensive mechanism or offensively as a power punch. And he can be using that as a power punch if power is strictly what they're going for. And he certainly has the timing and the skill to do it. So that's my one criticism. I don't know what your second one is.
Yeah. So just about the jab, I you know what it is? It's that, look, he learned how to fight from his pops. You know what I mean? If you watch Tszyu fought the same way. Like it's that's how he fights. They're trying to set up the big shot, and I think if he was trying to drain the energy and make Mendoza use all his fuel, right, and burn out, then he was successful doing that. So if that was his game plan, he was successful at it. I just think the jab could be used more. I'm not even saying he needs to be throwing it excessively, and because you could throw it too much where people start timing it and come over top with it. But if he just do it a little more, right, it is what it is. But here's the thing. I feel like the second issue, but it's hard to say this because it's part of why we love fighters, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did it in the Ocampo fight, but it just paid off for him, right? And he did it in the middle rounds against Mendoza. When he lands a big shot and he hurts you, he does get a little wild. Like I love that. Like, I love that. Yeah, I know. I love it too. But if you
because you see it, some
fighters
I know, and that's what I thought the same thing too.
Mendoza clipped him with some good shots, and I'm gonna tell you right now, Calix, I think Mendoza was waiting for that moment. He's like, I'm going to be ready for when he finally, I'm going to hit him back. I'm going to find out if this dude could take a punch. And you know what? I don't want to hear this dude don't got a chin anymore. All right. Tszyu ate some really clean shots from Mendoza and went nowhere. He walked through them. Right.
Yeah, he did.
And like that's just the truth. But yes, that is.
I wouldn't want to fight Mendoza. I'm just saying.
Look, he punched like he hit Mendoza with the good shots, and then he jumped for the kill, right? And then Mendoza was not ready to go, and Mendoza hit him with some big shots, right? So I look at that. I'm not saying like, oh my god, like I'm just saying against he got a little wild against Ocampo, bro. Like he hurt Ocampo, but the follow up landed and took him out, but. What happens when that follow-up doesn't work, number one, and two, the guy's not ready to go, and then you're facing a much better fighter? Like
I have something to say about that.
Yeah.
Before I do, Ricky Ricardo, $4.99 super chat. Salute, fellas. Is it possible PBC will cash in Lara versus Janibek next year for unification since Charlo is in protective custody for years now? And shout out to you. Appreciate the super chat. And we talked about that earlier. I don't want to get off topic here. We talked about that earlier. It is a possibility due to what's going on in Showtime, and we'll see how that plays out. Appreciate that super chat, but you can go back about 20 minutes in the playback and listen to what we had to say about that. I like that D-style. I find it endearing. It's what I like about fighters. It's what I like about Cotto, right? Is the vulnerability there. It's not guys I want to see playing safe. It's Cotto would be in fights against certain fighters, and you knew that time was coming. You knew it. You knew it against Mosley, against Margarito, against both fights, Margarito, Clottey. You knew those fights, that time was coming when, yeah, things are looking good, but then he's going to get hit with something, and then that's when the vulnerability shows up. And I think once Tszyu gets to that tippy top level at 154, which he's very close, right? He's just waiting for those fights. There's going to be those moments in fights where he goes for it and he's going to pay a price for it. And I want to see how he reacts to that, right? Because when those moments you were talking about in this fight late, I saw him too. And I thought Bud Crawford. I thought, okay. And once again, this is how great we think Tszyu is and what he's capable of, right? That we're talking about Bud Crawford. We're talking about Bud Crawford. I need people to put that into proper perspective. This is Bud Crawford we're talking about. But there's going to be moments in those fights, say a Bud Crawford, and that's why you can't dismiss a Mel Charlo moving down to 154 is, let's say Tszyu falls in love with this power. Let's say he doesn't use the jab against those guys. Let's say he gets Mel Charlo in trouble, and then Mel Charlo catches him with something. Those are the moments I want to see. I want to see how Tszyu reacts to that before we can crown him, right? Before we can say, okay, this is the guy. This is a special fighter that we thought. But I want to say this. He doesn't necessarily have to pass those tests to become a superstar, because I think he's a superstar, but one of the, I feel, necessary ingredients to a superstar, or a possible ingredient for that, in most cases anyway, is vulnerability. People want to see somebody that
no
for white guy. But people like to see vulnerabilities because it reminds us of ourselves. We're more that story is more relatable to us than the Tiger Woods, the Michael Jordans of the world, right? Say a Floyd Mayweather, where these guys are just too perfect. They're too perfect. It's more relatable when we have a guy who's a little bit more vulnerable. And Tszyu shows some vulnerabilities while he's mowing these guys down.
Yeah, look, Tim. Well, you know I'm high on Tim. But look again at this level. It's not just Tim. We that's what we're doing. We're nitpicking. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. I think I see what Nando's talking about the squaring up, but I think even in Kasha's case, they do it as a trap. Like he squared up because he wants you to go. And Mendoza was just too clever. Like at this level of boxing, you're throwing the punch where the fighter's gonna be, not where he is.
Mm-hmm.
Because the moment you throw it, the guy's not. He's not going to stand there. Like you know, what I mean, you got to time it. It's about timing anyway. Um, but yes, it's more of an issue when he has ironically success, right? And he starts going for the kill. This is why the jab is important. If there's ever a time to really use the jab, right, is when you hurt the opponent, and you believe you have him hurt. The jab's a safe punch to throw to see where your opponent is at. Plus, it could create other openings for you, in the process, right? Instead of just going haywire for the kill, right? Which I love. I mean, I'm not complaining. Like I love watching it. Like it's entertaining the shit. But if he could implement the jab in there, hurt a guy, throw the jab, see where he's at, you know what I mean, and then you go for your next shot. I think that would be good for Tim, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So he's improving every fight. And I see it. Somebody said, like, did he even pick Horn against? Bro, I picked Tim Tszyu in that fight. Like, it is what it is. But I've been high on Tim for like 3-4 years already. Like, it's been a while. Like, I've been high on him for a while. But Tim Tszyu is he's the best 154 pounder in the world right now.
That's what I was about to ask you. The poll says 76% say yes, 24% no. Now, let me throw this monkey wrench in there, though.
Sure.
Because I would agree right now. Yeah, but once Bud Crawford, let's say Bud Crawford comes out today and says, all right, I'm moving up to 154. Man. Then it changes for me. Then Bud Crawford's the best 154 pounder in the world. As soon as Bud Crawford moves into that division, he's the best guy in that division for me. So it changes. So I guess I would ask the chat, does it change for you if Bud Crawford moves in at 154? Do you think Tim Tszyu is just naturally bigger than him, so you think he's a better 154 pounder and he would beat him? Does that change the question for you? And does it change it for you? Do you think that Bud Crawford, if he moves to 154, is the best 154 pounder right now?
Well, it depends on what context we're saying. He hasn't even had a fight at 154. So
no, I'm just saying, like, do you pick? I'm not saying you rank him number one. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, do you pick him to beat everybody?
This will answer the question for you. I'll pick Crawford against anybody from 147 to 160.
Yeah, me too.
But if you were to ask me who do you think has the best shot against Crawford,
Tim Tszyu.
I do think it's Tim Tszyu.
Yeah,
I don't think Jamal has a shot in hell against Crawford stylistically. I just don't.
Do you think that's the fight to see? Because okay, if I can play matchmaker right now, I'm so sick. Look, and I would buy the fight. I'm not mad at it, but with these other fights developing and the landscape developing the way it is, I don't want to see a 168 pounder fight a 147 pounder. I want to see Canelo fight the winner, Benavidez versus Boo Boo. And then I want to see at 154, let's get to it. I want to see Bud say, all right, I'm moving to 154. Just like he said right after the fight, this is my last fight at 147. Let's move to 154.
And the
two fights I want to see is Canelo Benavidez. I think that would be lovely. And then let's do Bud versus Tim Tszyu. That's what I want to see. Or I would take Tim Tszyu versus Mel. Give me Tim Tszyu versus Mel.
Let me jump in really quick. It's a lot to unpack there. So one, I agree with you. I personally do not want to see Crawford against Canelo. Not now. But
you can always do that, right? You can always do it.
But here's the but. If he moves up to 154, fights Tim Tszyu and Jamal and beats them, right? Or fight Tim Tszyu at 154. If he wins that fight, I don't think Mel is coming back down to 154. I just don't. But then he fights Mel at 160 in some grudge match, right? Maybe for a vacant trinket or something, right? At that point, now we're talking because now you fight at 154, you fight at 160. So now fighting Canelo 168 isn't that crazy all of a sudden, right? That should be the trajectory and see where you go from there. That's what I personally would like to see.
I agree. And look, I don't understand where we've gotten, as I see a lot of it on Twitter and I see it on YTBC. Like, it's nauseating. Canelo's not fighting again till May, so we don't even talk about Canelo unless it's pushing back on these narratives. And this growing narrative out there that Canelo's ducking a welterweight, man, is so nauseating. And I already know how this is going to be framed. What you just said, it's going to be, oh, you want to see Bud go through 154 160 before he has a shot at Canelo. It's not that, dude. You can always do that fight. It comes off as a novelty fight to me. Let's get back to weight class business. Everybody's been saying they want to see Canelo Benavidez. Let's do that fight next. Enough with the crap. I don't want to hear Steven Espinoza talk about Munguia fight. Let's cut the crap. Let's get to it. And then the same thing with Bud. You talked about moving to 154. Let's get back to it. You said 160 was too high for you. You said 158 was the highest you would go. Let's get back to it, man. Let's get back to 154. You've got some intriguing matchups there if Mel does move back down. And you got Tim Tszyu right there. And if you're Mel D-style, that's a big fight for you. And it's a way for you to try to get back into people's good graces, right?
Yeah.
Right. And on top of this, D-style, this is another thing. Because when I said after the fight, Tim Tszyu beats Mel Charlo, people start to throw out all kind of different, oh, I know why you're saying that. I know why you're saying that. You know how it is. And dude, it's not tough to figure out. In the same time that Mel was laid up, Tim Tszyu waited around, right? He waited around. And that's why he's had 4 fights in the same span that Mel Charlo had one. He would have had 5 or 6 had he not waited around a little while. And he got to it. This year has proven to us that activity matters. And the inactive fighters have not been doing well. They have not been doing well. And Tim Tszyu has made all the right moves this year. And people try to throw out different reasons as to why we like certain foreign fighters, right? And it's not the case. I remember I think it was on the round table, and Ring IQ said something. He said, there's a certain percentage of American boxing fans that try to throw out ulterior motives as to why the boxing public in America has gravitated towards foreign fighters. And it is no more difficult than to figure out than they fight. Tim Tszyu is fighting. Lomachenko fought. Golovkin fought. These guys are fighters and they're out there fighting and they're coming over here to do it. We're looking at a landscape in boxing right now where we have Americans have 15 of the 68 major belts. They're not active enough. The belt holders aren't active enough. They're fighting once per year. We're hungry. We're thirsty for fighters who just fight. It shouldn't be confusing at all to people why the universal boxing base is gravitated towards a fighter like Tim Tszyu, particularly American fan base, because we're thirsty for this type of behavior. A run where you have Gachet, Harrison, Ocampo, and Mendoza. That's a hell of a run to put together in 18 months, however long it's been, while his peers in and around the weight class haven't been very active. It's beautiful, and that's why we're interested. That's why our interest is peaked in a fighter like Tim Tszyu. And it's the reason why I would pick Tim Tszyu over Mel is, look, I throw out a scenario, D-style, in which Mel could catch him, yes, but I think Tim Tszyu at this point in time is the sharper fighter. He's the hungrier fighter.
I mean, look, I picked him to win when they were first getting,
and that's going to come into play. And I think he's a better technical fighter as well.
Yeah, look, I've had Tim winning. I've said Tim would beat Jermell for a while now. Jermell just isn't what people think he is. If you didn't see that in the Canelo fight, I don't know what else to tell you. He was just completely outclassed, out of his element. It was all skill, had nothing to do with size. Jermell was just like Janibek, a really good fighter in a competitive and good division. But he was the best amongst the bunch, and the bunch included guys like Harrison, who Tim Tszyu utterly destroyed. Guys like Castano, who Tim Tszyu would lose. I hope that fight happened, just so he could destroy him, and he could keep moving the fucking goalposts at this point, right? Like we got into a point with Tim.
I think I'm higher on Mel than you, but I just think the style matchup and the trajectory of their careers, I would pick Tim Tszyu right now.
I'm high on him, and I admire what he did at 154. What I'm saying is, I never bought that he was just like, he's not an unbeatable guy. I thought he lost the first Castano fight, and he lost to Harrison. He was losing the rematch with Harrison, and he knocked him out, but he was losing almost every round to me, right? What I'm saying is he's not who people think he is. Like people talk about him like he's Crawford or something. Like he's not, right? So like, and that's my point. That's why the Tim Tszyu fight's so intriguing. Like I favor Tim, obviously. I understand Tim's not perfect, right? But even though I'm high on Tim, I understand he's not. We just talked about some of the things we see, right? So Jermel's in the fight. It's a good fight, but it's Jermel just isn't that dude.
You played a clip for me off air that I've never heard of the guy. He's a content creator. Do you think that some of this pushback is unfair at this point? Like they're expecting
unfair, bro.
They're expecting Tim Tszyu to do things that they're not expecting of other fighters, particularly the American fan base, right? They're expecting Tim Tszyu.
Well, look, the guy, he's fought 3 times in 7 months, right? And the only reason he didn't fight last year, really only Cachet, is because he had to wait on the fucking, Charlo fight that didn't happen anyway. They scheduled it like fucking 6-7 months out, right? And then when it was time to fight, he went the Canelo route, which is understandable money-wise. I get it, right?
Yeah.
And then he lays an egg, right? And bores everyone to death with his performance. So it is what it is, okay?
I think 154 Charlo is a much different, but yeah, I think Charlo's a great fighter. Once again, I just want to say it, like
he's a trajectory
is different, and the reason I push back on it is people are throwing ulterior motives out there to why people are picking Tim Tszyu over Charlo. Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. Let me cook. Look, we have a situation right now, all right, where the goalpost keeps getting moved with Tim, right? Mm-hmm. Shout out to Shakur Stevenson. He actually came out and just said, hey, congratulations to Tim Tszyu. I was wrong. He's better than I thought he was. Because he was picking, all right, Mendoza to win, right? If you picked Mendoza to beat Tim Tszyu, and you also picked Harrison to beat Tim Tszyu, no offense, you're not qualified to tell me what level Tim Tszyu's at, because obviously you've been constantly wrong about him. It's time to just say, you know what? I was wrong. He's better than I thought he was. So maybe I'm not the guy to measure where I think he's at, right? You keep moving the motherfucking goalpost. It keeps getting moved. It's gone from, I'm going to go all the way back, all right? If his name was Tim Smith and not Tim Tszyu, he wouldn't even be in the ring with Jeff Horn, right? He goes in there to destroy Jeff Horn. But that's Jeff Horn. I mean, who the hell's Jeff Horn? Like that's an Australian guy, right? As soon as he comes to America, it's going to get exposed. We had American fighters picking Cachet to win. We had American fight fans saying, oh, this guy, he's a hype job. Cachet, he may not be the best at 154, but he's a top 10 guy. He's going to expose him, right? What happened? He dominated Cachet. Well, what do people hang on? Oh, the knockdown. He got knocked down. People use terms that he got rocked. He was not rocked. It was a fucking flash knockdown. He got up, okay, and he was perfectly fine. What do you mean rocked? It's such a dumb term to use in the case of that fight. But nonetheless, outboxes Cachet. Outboxed him, right? The boxer outboxed him. Oh, yeah, well, Harrison's the second best behind only Charlo, and we're going to do that trilogy. He's going to outbox him, right? Goes out there, dominates, annihilates the best win in Jermell Charlo's resume. I'll repeat. He annihilated the best win on Jermell Charlo. Charlo went 1-1 against this dude, and he knocked him out and destroyed him. And the roles were reversed. And Tim Tszyu's the guy that got outboxed by Harrison and that was losing every round till he knocked Harrison out. And then Charlo comes out and annihilates Harrison. Are the narratives the same? Just ask yourself that question. Just ask yourself that. Are the narratives the same in that case? They're not. Oh, but Ocampo, watch. He's probably going to struggle with Ocampo. Spence beat him in 1 round. Spence beat him, and then he beats him faster than Spence did. All right? I just threw that one out there for fun. Right? And then this fight. Oh, yeah, well, he's going to get exposed. If he gets hit the way he got hit against Cachet, he's going to get knocked out. Oh, the power. Oh, I have people saying that he's fought better opponents than Tim. And and he has a better resume than Tim. And he goes out there, he annihilates and dominates Mendoza. And those same people, Calix, by the way, they got very quiet after the 6th round on Twitter. All of a sudden, they had nothing to say, right? They're really quiet. All of a sudden, I was hearing crickets on an app, which is crazy, right? Like, they come out and they're like, yeah, but the thing about Tim, now they're doing this shit. Yeah, but Tim's not a generational talent. Like he's not like, I don't think this guy's a future Hall of Famer. Oh, he's not his dad. You know what I mean? He's not I just don't think he's not a Gennady Golovkin. He's not like, now they have no choice but to compare him to fighters that we know were really, really good or Hall of Famers, and they're resorting to saying he's not as good as them. Look, let's wait and see what Tim Tszyu could accomplish and do and not doing it. Like, you know what I mean? Boxing is a journey. Let's see what he does. But I want to look, I love nostalgia. I love the legends and I love boxing history, but sometimes you just have to live in the moment and give a guy props for what he's doing in his era and his time. This is Tim Tszyu's time, now not Kostya Tszyu's time, right? This isn't Triple G's time. Triple G had his time, right? Let's see what he's doing and what he's going to accomplish, because we're going to see, right? I think his ceiling is very high, but obviously he needs to go out there and prove it in the ring, right? So we're going to see. We're going to see where it goes, right? I still remember people saying things like, Canelo's not as good as Fernando Vargas. Vargas is the better young champion than him. And then he surpassed Vargas years ago, right? And nobody would say Vargas is better than him. Let's wait and see what Tim Tszyu does. Let's wait and see what he could accomplish. That's all I'm going to tell people. If you're already comparing them to all-time greats and recent, great fighters, then obviously he's far surpassed your expectations, especially if you keep picking against them, especially if you're calling him a hype job. If you go, Calix, from hype job to you're not as good as Kostya Tszyu, I mean, I guess you're not doing that bad, right? If you're being called a hype job that's using his dad's name, right, to, well, he's not a transcendent generational star. Like, how many dudes are transcendent generational stars? Like, what? How many guys are that? Like, that's a pretty high bar to go from hype job to he's not a transcendent generational star. That's a big fucking jump. How about you just do what Shakur did and say, you know what? I was wrong. He's better than I thought he was. Let me enjoy this Tim Tszyu ride while we're at it, right? And I think the same thing's going to happen. If he fights Castaño, they're going to move the goalpost. Oh, Castaño was inactive. He's not the same. Okay, if he fights Lubin, but Lubin's been knocked out before, right? If he fights Sherman, but Sherman, he already went up in weight. He went back down. He got dominated by Canelo. So at this point, we're just going to be moving the goalpost. Then it is what it is. One last thing that I need to mention is this. Mendoza tried it early, and a lot of people that give their breakdowns about Tim Tszyu fights keep going back to this Gachet knockdown, right? If fighters are trying to recreate the scenario that happened in that moment where Gachet knocked down Tim Tszyu, good luck recreating that moment, because that was a mistake Tim did. It's not a pattern of Tim, right? And the great Freddie Roach, one of the greatest trainers ever, once said, when he watches film of fighters, he's not looking for mistakes. Anybody can make a mistake. Mm-hmm. If a guy makes a mistake and you're looking for him to do it again, good luck. He's looking for patterns, right? Obviously, it's not a pattern, right? And one more thing, Tim Tszyu does not have bad defense. He just doesn't. I keep hearing he has leaky defense. He's easy to hit. He's just because the guy's from Australia, it doesn't mean he has weak defense. Okay, just because the guy isn't from the Midwest and using the Philly shell defense doesn't mean he has weak defense. Okay, just because a guy is aggressive does not mean he has weak defense, and it doesn't mean that his offense is his defense. Because I see him not get hit a lot. Okay. I see him move away from shots a lot. I see him get out of range when necessary, and all that. So
he rolls well. He rolls
very well, and he's getting hit in the 20 percentile. Like that's not bad, bro. Like everyone gets hit. Like you'll say, oh, but he gets hit though. Well, that's every fighter gets hit. But how often? I could count twice that Mendoza hit him with a nice flush shot. That Tim, you made a mistake right there. He caught you with a good one. There was maybe 3 or 4 in the entire fight. Tim's head is not getting bounced back. He doesn't have the hiccups in the middle of the fight. Okay, he's not getting hit flush over and over again. And on there with this question for you, Alex. How often do you see Tim get hit with like 2 consecutive punches? Like a 1-2, a right hand followed by a hook, right flush. How often do you see that?
Not often.
Not often at all. Even if he catches squared up, he finds a way to get out of range and all that, and all of a sudden you're starting all over again, right? So I'm not saying he's Pernell Whitaker. Don't get me wrong, okay? But he doesn't have this leaky defense that people are talking about. He just does. I remember people would say this about. I used to do shows with a guy that they used to say Inoue had poor defense, right? Inoue always gets hit, and it's just embarrassing to look back to even think that. But the reason people say that is because they don't do defensive moves. Maybe because he didn't fight like Lara, being negative and moving around the ring and avoiding engagement. I think that's what people think defense is, Alex. Avoiding engagement is defense to people. If you're engaging, right, you're going to hit guys more, right? But you're going to get hit a little bit more too. But given how Tim stands in front of his opponents at mid range the whole fight, and only gets hit with like 20% of the shots, and very few of them are flush, is very impressive. I just got to say that.
He has good instincts and timing as a fighter. So he learns from his mistakes that he does make in the ring, because everybody does quickly. But this is mostly what I want to say about Tim Tszyu is people are so focused on the ceiling. People are so focused on who can he beat going forward, who can he not beat, is he the next Costa Tszyu? They're already focused on the future. And a lot of that has to do with, what do we say? It's generally the haters and detractors who are higher on fighters than those fighters' fans. So that's the problem, is a lot of people being overly critical of Tim Tszyu aren't honest about why they're doing that. That's number one. And number two, he's doing all of the right things. So I don't need him to be a generational talent. I don't need that. If it happens and it's possible, beautiful. That's icing on top of the cake. I very much like, and there's very much a vacuum for fighters who say, I'm going to just go out and put the work in. I'm going to stay in the gym. There's a reason it's making the rounds right now with Canelo already on the treadmill, already putting in road work, is, all right, he stays in the gym. He stays there. He stays ready. It's his life. And with Tim Tszyu, it's believable. With Inoue, it's believable. With Bud Crawford, it's believable that this is these guys, this is their life. They're fighters. They don't have to go to fight camp or fat camp. They stay in the gym. It's part of them. And Tim Tszyu's cut from that cloth. That we know now. That we know. When you see a guy fight at this activity level, when people are telling him, hey, just lay back and wait for the vacant belts. When you see a guy get bit by a pit bull on his arm, that's going to cancel 99% of the fighters out there that fight in 2 weeks. He still fights. He knocks a guy out in 77 seconds. So that tells us that he's a fighter. That tells us that he's going to maximize whatever his potential is. That tells us that his interests as a fighter align with the boxing fans' interests. And when I see that track record develop, that's when I say, okay, I'm a fan of this guy now. I'm a fan of this guy. There's no other ulterior motives to it. It's, okay, he's that guy now. I'm going to follow his career. Even if he loses, as long as he keeps doing what he's doing now, let's say he loses the Bud. Let's say he loses the Mel. Let's say he gets upset by some guy at one. Let's say he moves up to 160 and Janibek beats him. As long as he's fighting the fights, D-style, he's already said, I'm coming to America next. This is my last fight in Australia. I'm coming to America next. Let's get the fight date. This is all positive stuff. I don't understand what's to hate about this guy. I don't understand what's to hate about people who are naturally gravitated towards him. If you want to bring up the other stuff, you think maybe he's a little limited, then we have a conversation. But this other stuff, to me, it's just ignorance.
Look, the reality is, bro, that the way I look at boxing is I want fighters to fight, right? I want fighters that stay busy. I want fighters that are going for they're going for the brass ring. Like that's what I want. Whether they succeed in doing it or not is almost irrelevant to me. But that's the action is what matters to me. That's why I said earlier, like Mendoza going for it is why I'm a fan. Why I'll continue to watch him moving forward. The unfortunate disdain that some fight fans, if I'm using that term loosely, have for a fighter that is just trying to make a name for himself and he's trying to earn it in the ring. He doesn't want to give it to him. You know what I mean? It's amazing to me. Like what's the point of it? Don't you as a fight fan want to see these guys? Like I remember like when he beat Gachet, right? There was a content creator on here that was saying that Gachet is a traitor to his race for losing that fight. This is what we're doing. Like this is like a level of delusion and a level of like that's a sickness when you're thinking that way at that point. Like, you're sick. Like you have a sickness, bro, when you start talking that way. So all bullshit aside, look, I know there's a lot of banter with us and other content creators, and some of them might not even like us and all that, but we have a bigger problem, right? And it's the very extreme, fan bases that look at a guy like Tszyu and see him as some threat and see him with vitriol and jealousy because he's getting support in Australia, and then now they think, oh, he's going to come over here. Watch, Americans are going to support him, but they don't support the American fighters. Like if Tszyu, which I don't even think it's a guarantee, by the way, that he gets support in the U.S. I'm just putting that out there. We're yet to find out. But if he does, it's because of what he's doing in the ring. It's not because of his skin color. It's not because of his dad's name. It's not because of anything. Because most Americans don't even know who Tszyu is right now. Only fight fans know, right? Yeah. But if he does get support, it only has to do with what he's doing in the ring. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. That's why he wants to go to America for opportunity, right?
Legacy.
And legacy. That's what it is. That's what he's chasing.
And that's why it aligns with us. I mean, anytime a fighter goes for legacy, it aligns with us.
Like that's why we spoke. We spoke highly of Fulton for going to Japan, right?
Yeah.
And I pushed back on people that were saying things like, "Oh, he only went because of the money." Look, give him credit for going to Japan and leave it at that. He went to Japan. A lot of PBC fighters do not do, even if there's money, what Fulton did. All right? Benavidez was not willing. His management was not willing. His promoter, Samson Lucas, was not willing to go to the zone to fight Canelo. That they proved that by saying, we will not do it. Canelo needs to come over here, right? Fulton did the opposite, and he chased after the guy. Yes, of course he should get paid for that. That's why I want fighters to get paid for doing moves like that, right? You go fight Inoue in Japan, I hope you get paid. You go look for Canelo and he says, okay, let's do it. I hope you get paid. That's a side point to me at the end of the day. I hope Tszyu gets paid for trying to chase legacy, right? Because it's a duality. He's gotten out of his dad's shadow. I think he's done with that. I think he's out of the shadow, right? But he also respects his father and his legacy. He doesn't act like my father had nothing to do with me. Like Tszyu acknowledges that he was a pay-per-view star in Australia because of his father, right? He acknowledges that, right? He doesn't shun or hide from that. But he also acknowledges, I need to fight the best to get out of his shadow, right? How can someone not admire that? How can someone not like that, bro?
Yep.
Even if he's not successful in his venture. That's not the point.
It's the pursuit.
It's the pursuit. The pursuit of greatness. There you go.
Yeah. It's like that Miley Cyrus song, right? It's I forgot what she said. I don't know.
I don't listen to Miley Cyrus. I don't know. What's your favorite
Anyway,
Miley Cyrus song?
that one, I forgot the name of it. But Chicano Profit 499 super chat. Thoughts on Tim having Canelo on his hit list? I didn't see that. I saw him specifically call out Charlo, um, after the fight. So this
Somebody
is
made a shirt, just real quick. Somebody made a shirt. It was a KOTV, and it had like it had like Gaucher, Harrison, Ocampo, Mendoza, and they were all crossed out. And then it had like Charlo, Crawford, Canelo as a hit list, and he just took a picture with it. That's what that was.
well, that's fine as far as it's after those other names. And I want to make my position on this real clear, and I will in podcast coming up later this week. Is I want weight class business is what I want. So I don't think Tim Tszyu beats Canelo. I don't think Bud beats Canelo. I'm not as intrigued by those fights as Canelo versus the younger lion in the division and a Benavidez. And there are legacy fights in and around 154 that these guys should be fighting before Canelo's name is even brought up. When I hear Canelo's name come up from fighters multiple weight classes away from him, I hear payday. When I hear Badu Jack say it, when I hear Bud saying it, and Charlo proved this, I hear I want the payday. I don't hear I want legacy, right?
Mm.
And with Bud, it's probably a little bit different, but I want weight class business. There are legacy fights to be made between Tim Tszyu, Mel Charlo, Tim Tszyu, Bud Crawford, Canelo Benavidez. I've come around to your position on this that Canelo Benavidez is a legacy fight for Canelo. It very much is.
You know
So
why?
that's
Because
the fights.
perception.
Yes, because of perception. So I want these fights. That's the fights I want. I'm not going to apologize for that, and I'm not going to be accused of Canelo. As a fan, I'm afraid of Tim Tszyu or Bud Crawford for Canelo. It's ridiculous. Let's get back to the fights that the people want to see naturally, the organic fights that have been built up, and let's get those fights made. And that's where I'm at with it. So
Yeah,
if it's a hit list that they made, I'm glad it's beneath Charlo and Bud
sure.
Crawford because I want to see those fights I
Yeah,
want to see
and
those
again,
fights for Tim Tszyu.
it's about the pursuit, right? Like it's that's what we're looking at, and look, and I think like Tim knows, like the Charlo's a fight to make. There's a history there.
There are certain fighters, dude. I trust the track record of these guys. Canelo's one of them, and Tim Tszyu is now one of those guys too.
Does
Inouye's another one. Inouye's a guy who's about to become undisputed in two weight classes within a
100%.
calendar year. So
Yep.
these are the guys I trust those track records that they're going to make the right decisions.
One thing that we're learning about Tim Tszyu, because whether guys from, I noticed this. I feel like American fight fans are being more lean. Like I'm seeing it less with UK fighters, but I still see it, but not as much as I used to. But it still applies. Fighters in the UK, fight anywhere in Europe, Eastern Europe, uh, anywhere in Asia, okay, and apparently Australia too, right? No matter where they're from, like we still have a segment of boxing fans in the US that feel like other American fight fans, I guess, and the media here and the boxing media, the old media and all that, that there seems to be this belief, Calix, that they're getting like better treated better than the American fighter. And then they go a step further, like they're treating them better, even though they're American fighters better. And this has been an ongoing narrative for a while now. But when HBO had Chocolatito, they were featuring guys like Chocolatito, Triple G, Canelo, right? Although Mexican fighters don't really apply, really, but still. And then HBO did the merger with AT&T, or not HBO, but Time Warner. The merger happened, and then the vision for HBO moving forward did not include sports, so they just got rid of it, right? And here in the white people created narratives like, "Yeah, the reason HBO fell is because they were promoting the foreigners. That's why." Like that had nothing to do with it. Like Andre Ward was on HBO. Well, why
Yep.
nobody blame him? Like, you know what I mean? Like, well, what does that even mean? Right? And then like even now, like every time somebody wants to point out, well, why the zone isn't successful, because they're pushing the foreigners. Like it has nothing to do with that. You know how I know? If there was an agenda and the media was conspiring and not promoting American fighters because they're and they're the opposite of xenophobic, I guess, whatever that would be, right? Where are you guys at? The guy saying that we should be promoting the American fighters. Why don't you show up? Well, first of all, why don't you watch their fights on TV so they could get better ratings? Second, why don't you show up to the fights? Instead of complaining, oh, look, I got to say, and I'm sorry, like Champside. Look, they come to America and they're waving the Mexican flag in our face. And what is this? He's fighting in America. And then these Mexicans, they're Mexican American. And why are they waving the Mexican? Like all this crying and complaining and worried about certain fan bases who they're cheering for, who they're rooting for, who they're like, you know what I mean? And then they say things like, look, over there in Australia, Tszyu gets support. Well, why do we support the American fight? Well, why don't you show up to the fights? Why don't you show up instead of complaining? Stop complaining. If nobody shows up, okay, to a Pro Grace fight, Calix doesn't start saying people don't like people from Louisiana. Like, you know what it is? They got something against people from Louisiana, okay? When Golovkin came to Los Angeles, he sold it out, but Pro Grace can't sell it in his own hometown. Like that's not. If you're not selling out your own hometown, has nothing to do with old media, has nothing to do with the promoter. Well, actually, let me take that one back. The promoter has a big deal to do with that, so let me take that one back. But it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It has nothing to do with any of that, because you know why? Crawford sold out arenas in Nebraska, where he's from. They did a whole fucking parade for Terrence Crawford, celebrating Terrence Crawford, the American from Nebraska. Nebraskan. Is that how you say it? I don't know. Like Shakur Stevenson. Let me ask you, Calix. Was he fighting in a tent in front of 5 people in his hometown?
11,000 twice.
11,000 people showed up to support Shakur Stevenson in his hometown. The American, right?
Errol Spence has pulled in good crowds in Dallas.
Errol Spence has pulled in good crowds. So I don't want to hear, like, stop being crybabies. Boxing is a global sport. And Vegas is the capital of boxing, right? New York is another one. It's like the second tier capital of boxing. So at the end of the day, great fighters want to come to America to fight, right? And when they earn their position by fighting, by being active, by becoming world champion, by attracting the masses, right? Acting jealous doesn't do you any justice, okay?
Just makes us look insecure.
It makes you look insecure. Like that's all it really is at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're right. And there was a point in time when I took a position like that 10, 11 years ago, and we learn from our mistakes and we deviate, right? I talk about that all the time. I'm always transparent. I remember doing a video saying Andre Ward, American fight fans, should be supporting him over some of these European fighters in a weight class. And guess what? A year or two later, I became a Carl Froch fanatic. Why? Because Carl Froch was fighting the fights while Andre Ward was suing his promoter, his dead promoter. So, and not fighting. And then he comes off of that and fights 3 tune-ups. So you deviate and you come to a point as a fan where you say, why am I doing more work than the actual fighters? Why don't I just like what I like? Why don't I like the fighters who are fighting the fights? And you know, why, as a boxing fan, I just want fights on my TV on Friday and Saturday night. Whoever gives me that.
The one thing I can't stand, Calix, is this idea that, okay, not all, but some American fight fans put out, making it seem like it's the foreign fighters getting the preferred treatment. The foreign fighters have it easy. The foreign fight, and it's always like, all you got to do is look at the data. All you got to do is look at the facts, right? Tim Tszyu going to fight Mendoza, right? Mendoza's the American fighter, Mexican American, but the American fighter, right? I don't think they did it maliciously or anything, but just the fact that boxing websites are putting out, oh, there's going to be an Australian judge.
Yeah.
Like, one of the judges is Australian. Like, when have you ever seen an American fighter fighting in America, and people gotta point out that one of the judges is American? When have you ever seen that? I've never in my life seen that. Like I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It's not a pattern, right? It makes all the sense in the world for Fulton to go to Japan, right? That's where the money's at, right? Big fan base. You're gonna fight in a sold out arena. You show up and like you're talking about how we treat the foreign fighters. Let me guarantee you this, okay? When Tszyu arrives at the airport, Americans are not gonna swamp him, right, and overwhelm him for autographs the way Japanese fans did with Fulton. Okay, you see the respect they give Fulton over there. Did you see how they treated him like royalty over there? Like this, look at this great athlete. He showed up. He's gonna fight our champion, and they showed him all the respect in the world. And you motherfuckers still gotta show me your stupid xenophobic fucking energy and shit. You still want to complain and say that, oh, they're doing dirty things over there because they're letting them stack and all this other dumb shit. We're still having to hear about, oh, Fulton, he's not being treated well over there. What do you mean? Like what? I think they were throwing rose petals to his feet everywhere he walked, bro. It was crazy, right? He got treated perfectly fine. In fact, he pointed that out afterwards, right? So at the end of the day, American fighters get treated better when they leave the country than vice versa. That's number one. All right. Like all day, every day. That's just the truth. Right. When I forgot the guy's name, but what was his name? Thompson, the guy that got knocked out twice by Klitschko. When he went to Germany to fight Klitschko, I mean, he was swamped by German media over there. Like he was he was like a star basketball player or some shit. It was crazy. Right. Yep. Over here, I don't think his next door neighbor knows who he is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the next door neighbor doesn't even know that dude fought for the heavyweight championship of the world. That's where we're at right now in America. Boxing has lost popularity in America. That's why, for the most part, we don't support, quote unquote, we don't see sold out arenas everywhere like that because it's lost popularity, right? In order to gain that popularity, you got to win that American fight fan back. How do you do that? You do it by being active. You do it by accomplishing things, by going for legacy. That's how you do it. That's how you're going to win the fans, right? You're not going to win the fans by shaming them, right? You're not going to win them by telling them they don't know shit about boxing. You're not going to win them by scolding them and telling them that if they don't like it, then leave. That's not how you accomplish it at the end of the day.
No, you're right. I'll echo a lot of that. Any final thoughts on any of this? I mean, my final thought would be continue on with this track record. I mean, we could talk about deficiencies, and we talked about them, right? Lack of a jab. Maybe you should use the jab more, right? And we're nitpicking at this point. Maybe you shouldn't fall in love with your power when you're going for stoppages, because maybe a Mel Charlo or Bud Crawford could take advantage of that. But I love what I'm seeing. Great technical fighter when it comes to Tszyu. He can put together punches, cuts off the ring, even without the jab, sets up his power well, which is tough to do without the jab, right? He's setting up his punches well, which, by the way, that tells us he's a good defensive fighter because he has to roll with shots. He has to make you miss by that much in order to counter. He's got it all. It's all there. It's all there. To me, it's obvious we got a budding star on our hands, and he's coming to America, so it's all good. But more so than the results in the future, as long as he continues on this track where he's fighting the fights, he's giving the fight fans what they want. His interests align with ours. There's nothing bad here. We can have disagreements as far as where his ceiling is, right? Some people in the chat may have a ceiling down here. We have it a little higher. All that's fine. All that's fair. We'll find that out in time, as long as he continues to do what he's doing now. And the guy who gives me the answers quicker, that's the guy I'm going to be, the fighter I'm going to be more attracted to as a boxing fan. Just give me the answers quicker. I want to see the answers. Give me the answers quicker. It's why I'm drawn to fighters like a Lomachenko. Give me the answers quicker. Let's go. Let's get in the fights. And I think that's what we're getting with Tszyu. We're getting to a quick answer to this. I think we're going to have some really good answers in 2024 for him. And that has me excited. And that has me looking for his next fight. And for Mendoza as well, it's a telltale sign that we don't throw fighters away from losses as long as they fight the fights. He's putting together a good handful of fights, and he's lost 2 of them. Guess what? Who cares? I want to see him fight again. There you go.
Yeah, I think the mentality of let's we need to start rewarding risk taking in boxing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Martin turned down the Shakur fight, right? And I'm not saying, hey, make an example out of him. They probably will, though. But if a guy doesn't want to take the risks to get paid more, then that guy shouldn't get fights anymore. Like I'm sorry. Like it's time to the sport of boxing. Like in tennis, you reward the winners, the guys that are winning, and then they move up. The farther they get in the tournament, the more money they make. When they win in the final, the more money they make. That's aside from sponsorship's a whole different deal. But let's start rewarding the winners. Right now, I understand that it's not going to be exactly like tennis. I get that because obviously guys are going to get paid what they drawing power, how many butts they put in seats, how many pay-per-views they sell, etc. I get that, right? But for the most part, for most fighters, that's just not the case. Most fighters are not pay-per-view stars. Most fighters are not big, $4 million at the gate ticket sellers. They're just not, right? So for most fighters, they should be following a formula. Like all the promoters, everybody, you want the big money? You want the bag? Even if it's above your market value, we're not going to go above the market value unless it's a risk and a great fight. That's the only way. Like there has to be something in it for us as the fans. You're going to overpay somebody at the very least. Put them in there against a very dangerous opponent so we get some answers, right? So don't overpay them and put them in the ring with somebody nobody wants to watch them fight. And we're not going to learn anything about it. And when you finally step him up, he's going to want even more money, right? That's what we don't want. And that's what we've been saying at a consistent basis here for years. I know a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon lately, but we've been saying that for years here, right? That's just the way it is. It's just time. There should be like reward risk takers. I love the fact that Fulton took a risk, went to Japan, right, and defended his belts against who many consider 1 or 2 pound for pound in the world in a way. And he made 3 or 4 million for the fight. Good. Because that's the type of precedent I want to set. I want fighters to be like, so that's what I need to do to make the bag, right? I need to do stuff like that. And if they don't get paid, like rewarding Frank Martin with a big payday after he turned down the Shakur fight will be detrimental, right? Because then fighters will see that and be like, oh, don't take the big risk. Wait, hold off, and eventually you get a big payday, right? It may or may not pay off for Martin, but I think the powers that be needs to start rewarding risk takers because it benefits them as promoters, right? And it benefits us as fight fans at the end of the day. That's the way it is, right? But those are my thoughts.
You're right. And we're over on D-Styles channel Wednesday, right? Around this time, around the same time Wednesday. So that'll be HCP for this week. Make sure to check that out. Appreciate y'all for rolling through. God bless on this Monday.
Peace.